just like the hymn goes, it is well. And we are here celebrating the life of the late President Mwai Kibaki. What a life he lived, folks. And I tell you, his friends here, people who served under his leadership will tell you that he was no ordinary man. Dr. Dan Gikonyo, founder, owner, Karen Hospital, probably his closest friend, or probably someone who knew him the best in this room. Right next to him, CS for Health, Mutahi Kagwe. He also served as Minister for ICT under Mwai Kibaki. And right next to him, former MP Rongo. He was also Minister for Public Services under Mwai Kibaki. And now running for Governor of Migori, Dalmas Otieno. Gentlemen, what a life lived. Daktari, first to you.
Yeah.
I was asking before the break, you said you knew him, you were with him literally for the entire 10-year presidency, but you knew him before then. When did you first meet him? Well,
you know, Mr. Kibaki treated me in a very funny relationship. There was a time I was kijana. Sasa kijana unasema namna gani? There was a time I was a doctor. But to me, he was more like an older brother, more a fatherly figure, whom I must met at one of our lowest points of our married life with my wife. 1978. I was 28. And we had our third child, a boy, Eric, now grown-up man, married with his family. But he was born with such a severe facial deformity, both cleft lip and cleft palate. And us, as young parents, were devastated, Jeff, really devastated. As a young couple, and you have a child with a problem, and you're young and you have no finances, you don't know what to do. So the professor who was a pediatrician, Professor Colin Forbes, was our professor, and he told us, you know, no, don't worry, this is a very simple thing. This can be fixed. There's no surgeon in this region who can fix this. It's very delicate surgery for a newborn. But there's a fellow I know in London at the Great Ormond Street called Eric Gustafsson, who is very good. There's a new technology, he can do it. And we just take this kid to London. I look at Colin Forbes, London? I mean, does he know how much it costs to go to London? So a friend of mine was partly relative, Fred, Honorable Mwai Kibaki, said, we can raise this money. How do we do? Oh, let's go and talk to Mwai Kibaki. I mean, that time Mwai Kibaki was way out there. I mean, how do I get to him? So anyway, with my friend Mwai Kibaki, we talked to him, and one evening, he raised for me all the funds that were required for the surgery of that kid. I became like my father. So we, to fast forward, we took the kid, he came back, and then after many years, I became a doctor of some sort. And when I came back from the US in '86, difficult times, and everybody not trusting doctors, they would be used by the government to harm me, things like those. I became very close to Jenga Karume. Mm-hmm. And then he told me, you know, there's a friend of mine I want to bring to you also. And one day he comes in the office, and he comes in Mwai Kibaki. And the man is just sitting there whistling little. Said, and the Jenga says, at us, who should be my pressure. So, and there, we became good friends, we bonded, and he'd come for his regular checkups, and became very good friends. So even after then, when he had the accident, before he became president, I was still seeing him regularly. More as a friend, more like a father, more like an older brother. And but never did I ever see him as a patient. I mean, I never saw, you know, that you see a person, and this is my patient, and you treat them. That relationship actually was never there. It was always like the way you do something for your father, or you are together, you do things that you just do. It's not like other patients. Yeah. So he was never really a patient as such. He was just an acquaintance, that a friend, almost like a relative. Yeah, and like it became family. Yeah.
See, so about you, I see you nodding.
Yeah, because I can see exactly what the Dr. is saying. You know, for me, being younger, you know, for me, what I remember is admiring him from a distance. You know, as a young man in university, you know, watching a brilliant individual who looked suave and sophisticated. Never mind where we might have come from, but he looked suave and sophisticated. And I remember distinctly as a young executive working at the Standard newspaper and sponsoring golf in Nyeri Golf Club. And that's where he would be a lot of the times. So on the occasion, we would meet up with him, the late Munene Cairo, my brother Chris Morongaro would be there, Mushemi, and all these other guys at the golf club. And that's where I think at first we really began to talk. And he would talk to me almost as if you are on the same level. Yet, of course, he was, as Dan says, he was much older than us. He was our father figure. But more intimately is in 1992 when he formed the Democratic Party. And I was then working for the Standard newspaper. So I volunteered in his office as a PR. So I used to follow him around, take pictures, organize like an avid to go on top of Trade Bank building and take photographs for the presidential DP campaign. We creating the whole thing about Toka Gizani, working with the scanners of this world and so on. That's how I got very engaged with his campaign. And I remember we used to go to Bruce House in Gengi's office. Gengi Moigai is one with an office in Bruce House. And that's where we would go to talk about all these things and for him. So for me, even my interest in politics, I can almost say without any shadow of doubt that had I not been engaged with him or had I not known him, I probably would never have been in politics. That's a given for me.
Wow.
And, obviously over the years, until 2002 when I decided now I'm not going to campaign for other people, I'm going to campaign for myself. And I was passionate about the whole thing. And when I served with him, I served under him in ICT. And then, of course, in 2007, when I lost the elections, I kind of shifted away. And I said, now I'm going to go into business. I'm not going to go into politics. He called me back to serve as a chairman of the Multimedia University Council when it was in formation. Multimedia was just growing. So again, we started another journey. Inaenda namna gani hiyo shule, mnatengeneza vizuri. Hiyo ndio kitu mzuri ya kutengeneza watoto. Hiyo kitu yako ulianza pale. Hiyo ICT, hii shule ndio itasaidia hiyo. So wewe ufanye hiyo mzuri, iwe mzuri. So
I can almost hear him saying that. When you're laughing. When did you first meet?
Well, I'd known Kibaki, but when you talk of meeting, that means where there is some material conversation between the two of you. This, I would say, around 1985, and we were doing the sessional paper, number 1 of 1986 on renewed growth. Previously there was a sessional paper number 10 in 1965. Which most of the economic students read and knew about. So now we are doing the second paper on renewed growth, 1986 sessional paper number 1. And Kibaki was in Treasury. So as we were, and I was representing the private sector in the committee that was doing this under Simeon Nyachai at Arambe House. Now we would meet him, and most of the topics, largely economic, different sectors in our country. When you go to Kibaki, he knew the economics of this country like his fingertips. Call it agriculture, call it manufacturing, call it industry, call it services, whether it is in banking, in infrastructure, he had them all at his fingertips. This is the paper that finally you had the Vision 2030. And he was so committed to implementing the Vision 2030 that if many people had followed him, we would be very far. We would not be in this economic muddle that we find ourselves in. So he grew to be my professional mentor. And I found myself enjoying his points, his contributions, his decisions that had economic impact in the country. You said I'm standing for governor.
Yes.
Migori County. The things I would like to see done in Migori are actually some of the things Kibaki used to talk to us about. If it is renewed agricultural growth, performance of agriculture, establishment of industries based on agricultural raw materials so that those products are manufactured here. Even if it is healthcare, you would find Kibaki had ideas of the standards of healthcare that should be in Kenya. If it is tourism, he had the diversity idea. We just don't take every tourism to Mombasa or just Naivasha.
So would he be disappointed now that we might not achieve Vision 2030, like he said? Would he be disappointed?
We have not done well enough. We are not even on schedule. We don't have enough people committed to the implementation of that vision. So in my county, a substantial amount of what we used to talk about when Kibaki was there will be seen in practice. If it is tourism, converting Lake Victoria to another center for conferences, for tourist visits, because we are not far from Transmara, would be seen in my county. If I win the seat in the governor, you will see an economic performance.
It is when.
When?
That is much better.
What about in ICT, Bonasi?
Yes.
We advanced.
I think in ICT, Kenya is one of the most advanced countries in this continent, certainly way ahead of very many other nations. The cost of telephony in this country, came all the way from 70 shillings per minute to now the 3 shillings or so per minute, and the revolution, because it is a real revolution. The revolution in Kenya, including, don't forget, that Kenya was the first country on earth to operate mobile money transfer as in the M-Pesa in the world. And that takes risks, and it takes, entrepreneurial spirit to be able to move in that direction. I think that that whole scheme of things, and I think that Mwai Kibaki and Bitange Demo are talking about the same thing. I think we grossly underestimate the impact of a proper telecommunication system. I think when you travel outside Kenya, even when you go to some parts in Europe and your phone is not working, that's when you appreciate. Clearly, there is something we have back home that there is not elsewhere, in a lot of other countries in the world. And I think that that revolution, that openness, because if you fear openness, if you fear your own people, then you can't allow them the freedom that we have in this country. Because I remember people being very reserved about it and thinking, no, people, you'll be sending internet, we won't be able to control internet, and so on and so forth. I remember arguments about M-Pesa is not a bank, therefore they can't get a license, and they need to be a bank, but they can't be a bank because they are not on Moi Avenue having a branch. So technology was ahead of us. And I remember him distinctly talking about this, and he was saying, look, we cannot make laws for technology that will come because we don't know it. We can only make laws once we know what the technology is, and therefore create the legal framework to manage that whole, and it's happening every day in the world. Americans talking about how to deal with not Netflix, with Twitter.
Yes.
Facebook, all these things, because they are ahead of the legislative framework that exists globally. So I think that for President Kibaki to see that this is where we need to go and support us in the ideas that we were proposing to him, including the construction of fiber optic cables, allowing international gateway licenses, because we forget that before Kibaki, there was only one international gateway license. That is Telecom Kenya. All the telephones in Kenya used to pass through the telecom. He was Minister for Transport,
Yes.
all right? And that was the only way. So for us to allow a second international gateway and then open licenses for international gateways so that private sector can be able to take their information and transmit the information without control, as it were, of government, was these are the things that, because they are complicated and a bit sophisticated, people may never know about it, but that's what opens societies and it creates freedom in those societies.
By the way, there's some people who wonder what life was like before M-Pesa. Huh? There are people out there...
Or even mobiles. Or even mobiles. Yes. People used to... Jeff, people used to... When we were we forget there was a time in this country when you would be at home and you would dial a telephone, call the post office, and then an hour later, people would call you to go and pick up the phone. These days, if you are children, look at the phone.
Yeah.
A lot of kids, you look at the phone and ask, what is this? This is a phone?
That's right.
Why are you carrying it around with you?
Or lining up outside a phone booth.
Yes, waiting to make a call.
My goodness.
And that's not too long ago.
It's not too long.
It's not too long ago. I mean, when President Kibaki took over, that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we were doing. Yeah. And only very rich people had huge mobile huge mobile phones, that you never use. You wouldn't even know how to handle it.
It was like a brick.
Yeah.
Dr. Dan,
yes.
What are you going to miss most about this man?
A gentleman. There's something we forget about Mwai Kibaki. And in year 2000, even before the 2002 elections, we traveled to the U.S. with him and Honorable Kiraito Morongi. Purpose was to go out there and expose him or publicize him in the U.S. and in the UK. And I kept laughing with Honorable Kiraito that he gave me a card or a title as the Democratic Party advisor on international affairs.
That was your title?
That's my title when we went to the U.S. And we went to visit different groups, the Democratic Alliance, the Black Caucus, the Black Congressmen. And I remember one person saying something about Mwai Kibaki, that he could be the next president. In fact, when I introduced him to the group, I said, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you the next president of Kenya. People laughed. And then one congressman stood up and said, I agree, you have to listen to what the doctor said, because this is a man who in the last election had nearly 2 million votes with somebody else counting. I still remember that. With somebody else counting. And he said that, what if it was him counting? And he also said, this is somebody who has been a leader of the opposition. And he was part of the government, in a sense that when he was leader of the opposition, Kibaki never missed a single national day. And he may not have been given a big seat, but he was always there. And he led an opposition that was not opposing the government for the sake of it. I mean, he went on the streets to demonstrate things, but he in Parliament would give speeches or contributions that were constructive as an opposition leader. And apart from us remembering him as a president, we must remember him as an example of an opposition leader who opposes government on issues, not because he's an opponent in the opposition party. No. And what I miss most myself is this opening of space. Like Honorable Mutahi has said, before Kibaki became president, and we were still, I was still running a practice, a medical practice, very few of my staff had cars. And all of a sudden, Kibaki becomes president, and everybody's buying a car. In fact, I made a joke to him that one time he came to car and said, it has taken me so much time on the road to miss your fault. In the previous government, you could travel very quickly. There are no cars. You have come now, you've been able to buy a car.
Right.
And, but more important, he opened up space, as he says, in communication. And he, not to repeat myself, he opened space for people to do business without government interference. And that's what I miss most. A government that allowed people to do their own things without necessarily being coerced here and there, pay this, pay that, you know. And we took 10 years to establish Karen Hospital. To get licenses, to get registrations was a big issue. And that became open. And everybody says, Kibaki built the hospital for me. Yes, he did. Because if he didn't open up that space, it didn't make it so easy for us, we'd never have done it. He never put a penny into it. But by him opening that space and making business possible for any entrepreneur who wants to do something, he encouraged growth and created jobs.
Yeah.
We employ now over 400 people at Karen. You know, that's a Kibaki legacy. He opened up space and we have to do it. And I believe that this can continue with the new coming government and the government to come. And as Mutai said, there will always be another Kibaki somewhere. He'll rise up. Yeah.
Well, yes, I see you nodding. What will you miss most?
I think it's a mismatch. It's a match of things. And I think that the first thing that I think about and what I miss is that fatherly engagement. You know, that fatherly engagement, because once it is gone, there is nowhere. You can't find it. It's not replaceable. And I think that for us, and I don't think I speak only for myself, I speak for a generation of politicians and generation of leaders who will definitely miss that figure that we would all look at as an elder, as our elder in politics, as our senior in the political field, and really miss the fact that you cannot pick up your phone and you can't go and see him. You know, you cannot leave your house and go and see him and say, you know, there are these problems, there is that problem, you know, so that you can hear him telling you, hapana, hiyo ni kitu kidogo, you know, wachana na hiyo. So that we are going to miss, that guidance, you know, that elder leadership is obviously something we are going to miss. But as I said earlier, you know, they will come. The next generation of elders will be us. You know, we are. Oh, Dalmas and this guy already, I think, already on the... I'm on my way.
We're still young.
I'm on my way. I'm on my way there, quickly following behind. But I think that is something that we are going to miss. And then, on the issue of democratic space, I think it is good for us to appreciate what you see happening in Kenya today. You know, in a lot of ways, in a lot of ways, both at the individual level as well as at the national level, the democratic space that is clearly, you know, ingrained in our nation. You know, people move around this Africa. I've met so many colleagues from Africa who come to this country and hear the way that somebody is talking about the system. Somebody is criticizing the president, and the president is ignoring them. And, you know, he's not bothered about the criticism. And they say, if it was in our country, the president would have everybody here arrested. But I think that, you know, when you look at, you know, what Kibaki started, is a system where, as a member of parliament, as a governor, people criticize you. They see what they like.
You go on.
But you learn. And it doesn't really make any difference. If you look at even our President Uhuru, the things he is told, you know, and he just, sawa. You know, I mean, so what? You know, you can go right ahead. Without that seed that was planted during that period, and now perfected, you know, by the current government. And hopefully, this is something that we will continue with and build a really example of an African democracy. I think this is something that we will miss and something we will remember. We will remember the late president for.
I like that. Well, very well put. Very well put. What about you? What would you miss most?
I would miss what I would describe as sustainable formulation of development ideas. That means there has to be an economic think tank that continuously works with the leadership to formulate new ideas that would enhance and support our development. And then how you make sure that good ideas so formulated are actually implemented diligently up to the end. Now, that requires a Kibaki. you would sit as good brains in economics, and you know you have a senior whom if you say is right, I mean, if he tells you what you are proposing is right, you believe in you that it must be right. If Kibaki says it is good, then it must be good. I must have come out with an idea that is going to be helpful for our generations in this country.
Yeah.
So I would miss that process of sustained formulation of development ideas and then their implementation on a continuous basis. That means the leadership that the brains would benefit from. And if you have a think tank with some of the bright fellows that we have in this country, Kenya has a lot of good brains. When I was in public service, I came to realize that some of the civil servants are the best you could think of anywhere in the world. They have written papers, they have proposed ideas, but those ideas are not being implemented. They are all in their drawers. Ask a question, and they would bring you a beautiful paper that has a solution to the very thing you're asking. So I would miss that aspect that Kibaki managed in public service.
Yeah, very well put. And then, like you said, Kibakiism. So
Yes.
it has to be taught in some university one day. I'm going to go to the magic wall right now. But when we return, and we're not going to break, but when we come from the magic wall, I'm going to ask your most memorable moments with Kibaki. Think about that. As we go to the magic wall, can we do that and get some feedback? The tweets are coming in so thick and fast. Okello Mwalimu says, ask the good gentleman, firstly, in which area do they think President Kibaki could have done better? Secondly, what do you think was his major weakness? CS, let's start with you. What could he have done better?
Well, I think that, every human being, there is no perfect human being. And every human being has strengths, and every human being has weaknesses. And when Dalmas was talking about the patience that the president had, sometimes that patience could go to the other extreme and actually become, a problem. But he would quickly, just when he was on the edge, when you think this is now too much, that's when he would do something about the situation. And as for what he could have done better, I think that there is a sense in which the focus on economics, that we focus so much on economics in our government, we focus so much on economics that I think there's a point at which we ignored politics. It's all very nice for us to be very good at looking at economics, but that economics must exist within a fairly political environment, which obviously made people a bit disillusioned in some sense about some of the things and some of the direction that we were going under his leadership. But I think that was his style, and I won't exchange it for anything.
Absolutely.
But perhaps that's what one would say. Maybe we could have done a bit more politics as well as economics.
Dr. Would he ever get angry? Would he show anger?
I don't remember ever seeing him.
You don't remember ever seeing?
Neither.
But something about Jeff I would like to mention to you is that he never wanted to hurt anybody. And maybe when you ask me what would be his weakness, he would never want to harm or hurt anybody. So even sometimes when people did something really bad, like during the tribal clashes, and he would have done things that would hurt people, but he would never like to see somebody suffering. He had a very soft spot for human beings, which in a way you can say is a weakness or a strong point, but by not wanting to harm anybody, he allowed people sometimes to do bad things. But I never saw him shout at anybody, and he was always calm.
But yes, you said you'd never seen him angry either?
No.
Never?
Nope.
Did you ever see him angry?
No.
Nope.
Goodness. Okay, there's a question directed to Dr. Gikonyo. Would you have an idea if the late president wrote a book about what he knew, what the country went through in the colonial period? Did he?
Again, he was And I still is in the process of writing a book. And people, of course, like my friend Isaiah Kabera and Mr. Gituko would know better.
Yeah.
They are raised. They are raised, and there should be a book about him that will be coming out. I don't know when. But as I say, my friend Gituko would tell us. He knows.
Well, whenever it comes out, we can't wait. We can't wait. M. Musa says, C.S. Kagwe, did your ministry borrow from Kibaki's health plan of 2003 to launch UHC? Are there any parallels in your opinion?
Absolutely. We certainly have. I mean, the Universal Health Coverage Program continues to this day. But I think it's deeper than that. And if you look at the late president's legacy within the Ministry of Health, where he served from 1988 to 1991, is a lot of things were done during that period, including, for example, the fruition of Kenyatta National Hospital into a full-fledged hospital. That's when it was happening. The idea of government financing public health, came at around, it was him actually who did it. And so if you look at the record we have, and we posted all these things that we have done on the Ministry of Health website yesterday, the day before yesterday, you'll find that there is a lot of things that we are doing today that he set the basis of when he was Minister for Health.
Absolutely, well put, well put. Edwin Odenye saying, one of the panelists talked about Kibakiism. Mheshimiwa, that was you. And also the late president never liked physical aggrandizement by naming him state monuments, infrastructures. Why don't we have that? Do you agree with that? How come we don't have that philosophy anymore? Everyone wants things named after them. But he...
Well, I told you before that Kibaki valued ideas that would benefit the country as a whole. And naming institutions, naming roads and so on after him, he didn't find value in them other than as if it is publicity to the person.
Right.
That's what they are calling aggrandizement.
Yeah. That's very unique in a politician, isn't it?
Yeah, it is certainly very unique. But it is where I think Kibaki would have helped us more. If he had built a team like him that valued and strengthened the kind of economic ideas which he was proposing, and that team was still able to operate, right, we would have benefited a lot more as a country. So starting an institute or an institution that would focus on the economic issues under Treasury, most likely in this particular case, that would strengthen development of ideas that would make a difference in the economic prosperity of our country is actually overdue.
Let me just add something there, Jeff. I think, you have just floated a fantastic idea where you can have, the Kibaki School of Economics. At one time as an institute for thinkers in economics. I think that's a brilliant idea. And I agree with you regarding the issue of people not wanting aggrandizement. He was certainly in there. And I remember that President Kenyatta, for a long time, wanted something named after President Kibaki. And it has taken a long time for him and the family to agree that we rename the Odaya Level 6 Hospital into the Mwai Kibaki Hospital. So now it is the Mwai Kibaki Hospital.
Right.
But it took that long, and it took until now, for not just him, but his family as well, to accept that now, let's honor this man with this hospital that he started.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. Okay, as we wind down, Mheshimiwa, let's start with you. Most memorable moment for you with the late Mwai Kibaki?
When, of course, he approved our sessional paper number 1 of 1986 on renewed growth.
Yes.
When we passed the test that this is a good piece of document that would be beneficial to the economic future of this country, we felt good. Yeah.
Absolutely. As a former Makerere University student as well.
Yeah.
But yes, your most memorable moment?
I think it was just around the time that we were working on the fiber optic cable. And as I told you, there was resistance, from a lot of people about why we should not do it. At one time, I sat with him in his office. I still remember. I said to him, it's a bit frustrating because people really are opposing this thing. And he said to me, he said, sio kukataa, tunakataa. And as Dan says, he never said I. You know, akasema sio kukataa, tunakataa. Hii kitu hatujui. Unafikiri tunajua hii hatujui. Si wewe unajua. Basi wewe fanya. That to me, I'll never forget how he put himself amongst the people who don't know what this Kifo is all about. But lakini wewe si wewe unajua, basi wewe fanya. That to me is something I'll never forget. I'll never forget.
And you do it well in his accent. You do it really well. Dr. your most memorable moment?
The moment I remember very well that really made him happy was when he named his first cabinet. Because he had names and he was writing them with a little piece of paper. I was just sitting there watching him. And he was really very happy with his thoughts. I know many people talk about MOUs and things like those, but Kibaki selected his first cabinet on merit, what he believed would deliver. And I remember him telling him, just imagine a fellow like Professor Yang Yong talking in an international meeting, how Kenya would be perceived, because he believed in people of ability, and he was very fond of Peter and amongst other people. And when he selected a group, as Mheshimiwa here has said, he was not a man of politics. He wouldn't just select people because you think that you bring a crowd and you think that you favor a particular community. He would select you because he believed you can deliver something.
That's true.
And that's, I think, where he could not get along with other people, because other people want positions because you are campaigned, because you are this, you are that in the party. But Mwai would only select people purely on merit. And the first cabinet, believe me, delivered. And even Honorable Raila as a Minister of Roads, delivered. And people like Peter Nyang and many others in that first cabinet that people said was not according to whatever had been agreed upon, was a very strong and delivered. And the economy grew. By the time we were coming to the second term, we had gone to 7%. We were looking for more to 10%. And had it been not for the 2007 crisis, we would have gone further. And I believe that even that, where he said that was a blemish on his government, I see it as a blemish on other people who forced it upon him, because we would have done much, much better.
Yeah.
But memorable occasion is when he single-handedly chose a cabinet and this guy would do here, this guy would do this, this guy would do this, and he was very happy with it.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's great insights. Dr. Dan Gikonyo, thanks so much. C.S. Mutahi Kagwe, as always, good to see you.
Pleasure.
And great imitation of do one more, go on. Give us one more.
Hapana, wewe washa hiyo wewe.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate your insights and great conversation. This makes it so worthwhile. He was a great man. And thank you for your insights. And thank you for joining us. Remember, if it's Wednesday, it's all about those three letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. Good night, good luck. God bless Kenya. God bless the Kibaki family too.
Thank you.
Ken Kibakiism.